Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and as you will have seen from the title of today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 things I wish I knew before I started lifting. And me and Pascal covered this on the Improvement Season podcast, but I have some updated ideas and also going to do this in vlog format to make it maybe a little bit more interesting, or maybe reach a different audience through this. So in the background, you're going to see some of my weight training from a push session, I believe, and this was the week before I was going to deload, just a set from each exercise, just to keep you engaged and see me kind of working my ass off, hopefully whilst maintaining good technique. So the first thing, and talking about technique, the number one thing I wish I knew before I started lifting was the importance of technique. But that doesn't go far enough. One of the reasons I wish this is because I do have a shoulder injury that I picked up through poor technique, and that has led to having a slap tear, which is basically this little bit of kind of material in your shoulder that holds kind of your bicep and your shoulder together, to put it in simple terms, so that when I'm kind of overhead and things like this with my left side, it's a little bit unstable. It's just I lose some stability there. Some people have surgery on that. I was scheduled for keyhole surgery, but happen chance occurred, and it was able to recover enough, and I was able to strengthen the muscles around it enough, so it's not really a concern for me. But I wouldn't have had that, and that would have been nice. But also technique in terms of not just removing chance of injury, but also technique that's specific to the goal at hand. I think I realized when I started powerlifting that, yeah, we want to move A to B, but I just thought kind of the more weight I could move A to B, the better for hypertrophy as well. Whereas training for hypertrophy, as we know, for muscle growth is distinctly different. We want to control that weight from A to B. We want to stretch it to get that nice stretch-mediated hypertrophy, of course. And then we also want to try and contract it nicely too, get a good mind-muscle connection. Make sure the muscle that we're trying to target through that lift is the one that's the limiting factor. And if it's not, that's probably not great. And I think that's why I probably didn't see great growth through my quads for a long time, because I was just squatting, because, you know, Tom Platt says squats are the king, but squats for me just didn't really build my quads very much, and I kind of just felt it in my posterior chain. I have a good set of glutes. They just take over for me on kind of just a general squat that I'm not really even thinking about. And now I kind of know technique and the importance of that. I can slow the eccentric a bit more. I can maybe pause at the bottom, and I can make sure to wear a heel lift and really shove my knees forward to get a lot of knee flexion to really get a lot out of my quads, whereas I just didn't know this before. So that's definitely the first one. My second one would be the importance of a surplus. Reason for that, and again, it's a really simple thing that hopefully many of you are like, duh, energy balance, surplus is important. But for the longest time, I didn't really know the importance of a surplus. I just thought, right, I've got to eat clean, eat high protein, and I'll grow muscle. Dirty food will lead to fat gain. And that simply wasn't the case. And yeah, my first kind of mass, I was certainly in a surplus, but way excessive of a surplus, and I gained a lot of fat in that period of time. And after that mass, I kind of burnt myself a little bit, and I was afraid, therefore, of gaining fat. And that's why I kind of termed adipose phobia, people who fear fat gain when they're going through a mass gaining phase. But I've been able to reframe that as kind of the cost of doing business. Gaining muscle, especially when you're more advanced, it's like cycling uphill. We want to make that process as kind of easy as possible, even though it's a really hard process. Being in a surplus definitely makes that process easier or more attainable. And so I wish I just knew that, and knew that kind of gaining weight and gaining body fat was fine. I can lose that in future, and it's not such a concern for me. So I wish I knew that earlier, because I think that, again, would have really helped my training performance go up. And I think training is the match that lights the fire for muscle gain. It's so important. Nutrition is just permissive, but with good surplus in place, you're going to have better training, better recovery. It's just going to happen. So I wish I knew the importance of a surplus energy balance a little bit more earlier on, and didn't disregard that, and wasn't so fearful of fat gain, and didn't kind of, just have a little bit more of a long-term mindset versus this short-term mindset of, oh, I'm lean now and I'm comfortable. The third one would be the importance of slow and steady gains. So we don't have to hit a PR every week. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic past the novice stage. We're going to have to work with the same loads, the same reps for a period of time. And that is kind of meeting that overload threshold where we're working hard enough. It's stressful, it's overloading to the body. And eventually, if you keep working with that just forever, it's going to become too easy because you've adapted to it. But these PRs are not a need to grow muscle. They're more of a sign that you've done the work to grow the muscle. It's like the chicken and the egg, right? So I think that knowing this, I would have not so much sacrificed technique. I wouldn't have therefore got injured as much. I wouldn't have burnt myself out as much, and I could just hold some in reserve to kind of accumulate this later. So I wish I realized that, because I was just trying to force progress. Whereas these slow, steady wins over time are what leads to people growing muscle long term. So then the fourth one is that it kind of comes to technique, it kind of similar to technique, in that there are no must-do exercises. I'm not a powerlifter. There is no specificity to any of these lifts for bodybuilding. The most specific thing to bodybuilding is like posing in trunks and being on stage, right? So as a competitor, but even someone who's just interested in growing muscle, there are no lifts you must do. There are patterns and movements you must do. You must stress muscle groups. You're going to have a hard time maximally growing your quads without any kind of knee flexion, right? It's just not going to happen. You're going to have some hip extension probably and some knee flexion to grow your hamstrings. But there's no must-do exercises, and there's loads of tools at our disposal to get the job done. And I really wish I realized that, because I was very much about squat, bench, deadlift. And I think these can be great foundational lifts. And actually, I don't regret having gone through that process, because it taught me how to kind of lift heavy, push hard, progressive overload in terms of adding load over time. But I just didn't really think that through enough past, this is good for powerlifting, maybe not so specific towards bodybuilding. And again, like the squat, I'm just not built for squats for quads. And if I want to grow my quads, I'm better off in a leg press, for example. Whereas I had some dogmatic belief that squats were king. Bench press, barbell bench press, gotta do it. But what if you have a shoulder niggle? What if it's getting stale? Is there not another lift you can do? Whereas I just held steady to these lifts that I felt like I must do. And over time I've evolved and I've matured, and I've realized, right, the muscle doesn't know what lift you're doing, just like it doesn't know if you're eating an apple or a banana or some other fruit that like maybe someone says is bad for you. It just knows that it's getting a certain number of micronutrients, fiber, phytonutrients, it's getting macros. Just in the same way, the muscle doesn't know that you're doing a barbell back squat or a Smith machine squat. It just knows, right, I'm being challenged over this range of motion with this tension. So you got to find the ones that suit you best. And so I wish I kind of realized there's no must-do exercises. And then the fifth and final one is that the weight matters less than effort. That is what I wrote. So these all kind of come together in some way, like they all join a little bit. But again, I was so obsessed about needing to push a certain amount of load, maybe on a leg press. But we all know that person who can put on 10 plates aside on the leg press, but they come down half an inch. Who's growing their quads more? The person who uses 5 plates aside, half the load, but brings it for a full range of motion, full stretch, and importantly, actually has intensity of effort, and they get close to failure. So, I mean, actually, my point wasn't necessarily the range of motion, but it was more that the kind of relative effort matters more. You could lift heavy, but get nowhere near kind of close to failure, and you're probably not going to grow at your most. Now, if you lift really heavy, and this kind of goes too scientific really, but I know you can be quite far from failure if you lift heavy enough in terms of a percentage of 1 rep max. But when we're talking about like a 5 to 30 repetition range, all of that can be very hypertrophic so long as you push hard enough. And it just kind of brings us back to, has to be overloading. So if it's hard, challenging, it's causing some disruption within the muscle, it's causing you to get a pump, you're getting fatigued, reps are probably slowing down. You're in that zone of now you're challenging yourself. But if you finish a set and you're just like, yeah, that was great, I lifted heavy, but it was easy for you, it's probably not challenging the system, it's not challenging the muscle to have to grow. But I wish I just realized that like the weight, I don't have to just lift really, really heavy and have to hit these PRs, but as long as I'm lifting with lots of intensity, relative intensity that is, and lifting close to failure, I can actually lift with a wide range of repetitions, which I kind of like stuck myself in a hole of like that 8 to 12 rep range. It's like the hypertrophy rep range, and that can be a great rep range, but it's not suitable for even every exercise. You think about lateral raises, 8 to 12 rep range for lateral raises. In my opinion, not the best, and certainly as I've discovered, as I go high rep range for lateral raises, my delts get blown up and I see really good progress in those higher rep ranges versus lower. So I wish I kind of realized that. So really, it comes down to focusing on the big principles. And also, I guess we also alluded to this in the improvement season, I wish maybe I got a coach early on so that I could just expedite this. For example, for myself, like one of the benefits I give my clients is I've made all these mistakes over this, like almost coming to 2 decades worth of weightlifting. And so they don't have to they can learn from my mistakes without going through my mistakes. and we can expedite their progress. I always think of a coach as like a walkthrough guide to a console game. We know those console games where, yeah, you can go at it, you can try your best, but you're never going to get every single little package here, and you're not going to get every little soup up and level up here, and maybe there's a boss you come across, you literally just cannot beat him. So then you need this walkthrough guide to kind of help you along the way, so then you can finish the game, and the walkthrough guide just makes that whole process way smoother. Might not make it as fun sometimes, but hopefully a coach does make it fun too. Might make it more fun, in fact. If you just get stuck, that's not fun. So that would be my kind of recommendation to anyone looking at this and hearing, and maybe you've seen multiple other people do these videos, you're like, man, there's so many mistakes that people are making, that these people have different experiences. Find a reputable coach, do your research, make sure there's someone you trust and they have good results with clients and their clients speak well of them. And yeah, they're going to expedite your progress big time. So if you are interested in Revive Stronger coaching, as always, that's going to be linked in the bio, and we'd love to have a consultation with you. Otherwise, guys, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you've enjoyed this vlog. Always leave me a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.